Hey, Newsa-Cast listeners. Just want to give you a little information about the mission of the Newsa-Cast. Our mission stems from the mission of the Red Smith Banquet, and that mission was to support youth sports in the Fox Valley. Over the 57 years of its existence, we've been honored to give out over $1 million to various youth sports organizations throughout the Fox Valley. The Newsa-Cast is looking to continue that mission and support youth sports as well. You can help us do that by donating to the Newsa-Cast and the Red Smith Sports Banquet. On today's episode, we have an interview with Mike Draheim from XLR8 Sports. We take an old look at new, sponsored by Raleigh Winter. Our throwback goes back to 2021 with the legendary Joe Torre, and we end our episode with our favorites, Forgotten and Never Forgetting.
So old guys like me can benefit too.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
You call me old?
Oh, you said it first.
Yeah, I did. I did.
Welcome to the Newsa-Cast. What is a Newsa-Cast? It's where we bring local folk stories to life through conversation.
Hey, Newsa-Cast listeners, welcome to another episode of the Newsa-Cast. We're, excited for another, hopefully, insightful interview. We go back to Mike Draheim, and Joe takes a ride to XLR8.
Bike there, Tosh. 4.2 miles.
So there you go. We get to get some insight, and Joe was there. He was at the new building, and it's fantastic. And go ahead, Joe.
We'll tell the story in the interview, but he has he has three, I think, if not four, treadmills from 1992. And Mike's the only one that can work on them. But these things are the most insane treadmills I've ever seen. The incline, the speed, and then some of the drills that these athletes do. Tosh, it is freaking unbelievable how skilled these kids are. It's insane. And we talked and wanted to talk to Mike about, we had him on a couple of months ago, but now all of these athletes are competing. They have competed in state. A lot of them are going on to college. We told the story of Lily Fouts going to Belmont and Nashville, both as, for songwriting, but also for D1 track and field, cross country. So, that's. We wanted to catch up with Mike because Mike has, at one time he texted me saying he had 46 athletes competing that day, so he has a lot of people and tells a lot of great stories. So it was a great interview with Mike and we had a great lunch and Mike's a big supporter of ours. He's a sponsor. Actually, we're going to, we're first to announce breaking news.
Working on some things.
We're working on some things that the Mike's going to sponsor XLR8 and it's going to highlight some of the local athletes that are just. It's so hard to explain, but some of these kids are so incredibly talented in every single sport. It's nuts.
It is absolutely. So it's a great place, great training. Mike knows what he's doing. Everybody at XLR8 does, and it's a great place for our young athletes here in the Fox Valley. Yeah,
definitely. Speaking of a great place, Tosh, I got an idea for you. And ever looking for some extra money? And I know your love of the Packer draft, the NFL draft, 342 days. Shout out 342. But
perfect.
I saw on the news right before we recorded, they're talking about renting out your home, Tosh, a little short-term rental, the thousands that you can bring in. I'm thinking that's a nice little side gig for you, maybe.
Maybe that's what we need to do. I don't know how home rentals will be in Appleton and Kimberly here, but I heard there's a lot of hoops to jump through to rent your home. It's not as easy as just saying, "Hey, I'm just going to rent this."
I think it depends.
So, I don't know if I'm ready to do that.
It's kind of wild. Somebody else stays at your place, but it's insane.
Well,
the number they're talking about. Yeah,
we've talked about that there are people who rent homes for EAA, and. We've talked about that. That'd be a great time to get away and go on vacation. But we've never pulled the trigger on that. So I'm sure there would be lots of people who are looking at that.
You would have you have a great house, perfect setting in the backyard and things like that to probably command top dollar. And I think your location is really good because they were talking about expanding kind of the footprint of where people are staying, because everything in Green Bay is sold out. So obviously you keep moving out, and
Right.
Fox Cities, Wrightstown, Darboy, those areas. It's 20 minutes, right? 25 minutes tops to get to Lambeau. It's super
Absolutely.
easy, but yet the accommodations, I would argue, are really, really good. You can easily Uber if you need to. It's all of that's great.
that's
so
true.
you do that for the NFL draft or for EAA, Tosh, you're golden, man.
There you go. That could pay for summer lacrosse, but
Well,
that's a whole other story.
that pay for summer lacrosse and a new sponsorship for the Newsa-Cast, Tosh.
There you go.
The Toshner family
There you go.
Newsa-Cast presents.
All right. Well, maybe we'll have to think about that. But before we get started on things that we are, looking at, or we did, I do want to mention that we're filming this on the 19th, but we had the passing away on the 18th of the great Willie Mays.
Yeah.
The most famous catch in the world over the shoulder. I heard that with the game coming up in Birmingham, he wasn't going to make it in the Field of Dreams game.
Okay.
When that was said just a few days ago, I was like, oh, he must not be in good health, because, that was his stomping grounds when he came up playing. And what a shame. I mean, arguably one of the best baseball players to ever play the game.
Yeah, that is a shame to these guys are, just we're losing the greats, Tosh, and that you're right, that catch. I mean, that's literally one of the greatest catches ever. And
Absolutely.
yeah, the history, that's the great thing about baseball, is the history and the numbers of baseball. That's the one thing that baseball has always been able to maintain, is just that authenticity, I guess, maybe, and that, I don't know, closeness that you can say Willie Mays is one of the greatest baseball players ever. It doesn't matter which era.
Yeah, and you say Willie Mays, everybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
pretty incredible. So 93 years old, lost another a great baseball player, and just a great individual. So
and Tosh, we lost another great individual. I know we both knew very well, and certainly in our growing up years, she had an impact on us. But Joni Hawkins, Don Hawkins, Hawk, post 38, American Legion Baseball. I mean, Joni was, I can't remember how old, but she was in her 90s and passed away a day or two ago. And, she was a special lady, Tosh. I know you have a great story to tell about her, for sure. And Hawk.
Well, anybody who came up playing Legion Baseball with Hawk, his wife was always there. And there was a story that Hawk drove the bus.
Yeah.
There was a light blue bus.
Yeah.
And Hawk did not like people being late. And you weren't late. If you were late, you weren't playing. You weren't there because the bus would leave. And the bus didn't wait for anybody, including Joan Hawkins. One time, he sat there and waited, and Joan came in late, and he yelled out the window, "The bus waits for no one," and took off. So
he left Joni in the parking lot?
You bet.
Oh.
So that was his rule. So I'm sure people have tons of stories about the two of them, but the two of them really made what Legion is, and that Legion field, which is one of the better fields in the entire Fox Valley. And it's a shame, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, what a great life, what an impact the both of them have made on people, literally decades. I remember being 13 years old. I can still remember Don and Joni Hawkins riding their bike, and they happened to drive past where I grew up on Division Street, and they got me to join the Legion as 13. They taught me how to score baseball. Both of them taught me, because I would make mistakes, and Joni would help me or explain, no, that's a hit, or whatever. Just the fine art of scoring baseball I learned from the Hawkins, both of them. And it's so funny. I at 13, I'm riding the bus too. I never played baseball, but I love baseball, and I like scoring baseball, especially at that age. But I remember that riding the bus, like you said, and I can still picture Hawk. We probably can't really talk like he does on here, but I can just imagine the Hawk lingo. And did he chew Red Man, Big Chaw in at that time, or no? Because I have images of that.
Yeah. There's there's a lot of chewing going on in those days.
You know, we battled this with Red Smith. You know, the Red Smith logo. Red always had a cigar. I understand you shouldn't smoke a cigar. I'm here to admit, I smoked a cigar the other night, Tosh, and it was fantastic. You know, it is what it is. We're not promoting that you do that or anything. And
No.
you know, it's the same thing with chewing. You know, you shouldn't chew, right? It causes cancer. We all get that.
Right.
But Hawk, you know, in the 70s, 80s,
Yep.
big chaw red man, and it's just
Absolutely.
he was a great like chewer. I think, you know, he if you think of an image with a guy with a big chaw in, Hawk had it, and I remember, it might be too much information, TMI I think they call it. He'd pick his teeth with a matchbox kind of to get the the leaves out of his teeth. But yeah, the images, the things we remember. Tosh, what a road we're going down.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Newsa-Cast.
That is a great, nice image. What else you got, Joe?
Well, I got to ask you one question though. So since we last recorded, Rory choked, right? I mean, that was just a good old fashioned choke.
Oh gosh.
I mean, you hate to say that, but yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
He choked. He had it in the palm of his hand, and how do you missed the first one? Okay, sure, but then to miss the second one, that was a choke job by Rory. But you know what? He's playing good golf right now.
Yeah.
And I am positive he's going to be right there for the British Open. And hopefully he, takes another one of those majors. And, I like the guy, so I hope that he can come back and win a Masters yet.
Sure.
That would be, because that's the one he's missing, right? The Masters.
Yeah, I think so. It's one, I'm kind of a Bryson fan. I really kind of enjoy Bryson. Talk about a guy that changed his image, and I started, following him on YouTube. But I like Rory too, and boy, that's just gut wrenching. I can't. I mean, you're right. He'll come back. He'll play in the Scottish Open or whatever the next tournament is. He'll play well. He'll contend in the majors. But man, that's gotta just. I don't know. To you as an athlete, I guess I'll never know that feeling. But boy, that's gotta be tough to overcome that. To forget that. To just. Be. And then when you're. It's got to creep in your head, right? The next time you're in that situation. I mean, that's the thing. He played so well. He really played. He putted fantastic, except for 2 putts right at the very end.
Right.
And that's golf, and that's just, damn, golf is a hard game.
Yeah. But to go back to DeChambeau, wow. The interaction with the crowd, just him, you could tell he was having a good time. There's a video out there of him. He, a young man with disability, signed his cap in the middle of play, signed his cap, shook his hand. That's what you want to see out of professional athletes.
Right.
That type of interaction. It was fabulous. And to do that during championship round is absolutely amazing. And I good for him. Absolutely good for him. And hopefully that rubs off on some of these guys and they take it a little less serious, but still competes.
So the interesting thing, so I've just become oddly fascinated, and a lot of it is because what we're trying to do with the Newsa-Cast and all of our socials to try to just understand that world, because you and I didn't grow up in it. It's hard to understand. The kids, Bryson is latching on now to that. He's creating content and buying into that, and it's incredible. I mean, I've already, if you go to his page, to his YouTube, I mean, he's already has content created all around that, well produced, and he was playing to the crowd, like, the shaking of his head, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and and those guys can make a lot of money on doing that as well. So, yeah, he's a fascinating. He's just, I mean, right? We latch on to weird, just fascinating people. I try to like his putting stroke, and it doesn't matter if I like it or not, but I try to like his putter stroke, Tosh. I really try to like it.
Yeah.
But
it's tough.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's he can reproduce that every single time.
Exactly.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And it's comfortable for him, even though it doesn't look comfortable.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. And that's when you're at that type of elite performance. I guess that's, the muscle memory and the repeatable nature of that type of stroke is what works for him, obviously, right?
He buys into and he understands that he's weird, quote, weird.
Exactly.
So I saw an interview in one of his press conferences. He was talking about he takes his golf ball and he soaks them in Epsom salt. And that does something with the buoyancy. He can see whatever. And then he marks something, a line on these balls, whatever the buoyancy point is. It's way above my head. I don't quite understand, but he's looking for something. His caddy actually does this now. And then those balls, and that tees up a certain way, and it's going to put whatever spin he's looking for guaranteed on this. I mean, just every aspect is so well thought out. All the tour players are, but his swing is pretty unique. Boy, he just rips it, man.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I've actually ever heard what his club head speed is, but it's got to be insanely high.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, definitely. Didn't they call him like the professor? I mean, he's tried a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like the length of the clubs stay the same, but the angle changes for his, different irons and all kinds of stuff that he's done.
So I've got to credit, pardon my take and foreplay. They both do great job talking about some of this, but yeah, I don't even quite know how it works, but like his 8-iron or his 6-iron is really an 8-iron. I mean, the whatever you think of a club, he's like 2 off of that, but I'm pretty sure I heard that he like 3D prints his clubs. I have no idea how that would even work.
Okay. I have no clue.
Yeah. He's just completely dialed in and has this team, and then he throws the social aspect into it alongside.
Yep.
It's really kind of cool. And then he just reinvented his image, and it's actually really, really cool to see. And he's killing it.
Yeah, he is. Absolutely. So yeah, cool to catch up on that and continue to watch him and as he progresses. Got anything else, Joe? Anything fun and exciting coming up, or what you just had over the weekend?
Yeah,
not much, Tosh. I'll save one thing that I did a couple of nights ago. It's in the Forgetting and Forgotten segment, so check that out. I'll shout out Poplar Hall, but yeah, you have to wait to get that. So that was my enjoyment in the last week. But certainly watching the U.S. Open. Father's Day was able to. Yep. Actually, I forgot, Tosh. Yeah, that's right. We had Father's Day, so I had a great. Two of my kids were out of town, but Owen was in town. We had a great brunch and took his dog Sully for a walk out at High Cliff, but then sat in a chair, Tosh, morphed into that and watched golf, and that all of the events that unfolded. It was just it was almost a perfect Father's Day. So I hope you had the same.
Good. Yeah, we had a good Father's Day. Got out. We as the Stars hockey team, we always do cleanup at the Macville tractor pulls.
Oh yeah.
So we had Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, and Sunday morning. Sunday morning ended up being in the rain, but we that's a good fundraiser for us. We get the guys out there. It's kind of nasty. It can be, but then we went to we went to Tipsy Taco.
Yeah.
And had a
good
great
time?
Nice little dinner. Yeah. Had a big margarita and some tacos, and sitting around with the family was a good time. So yeah, excellent Father's Day. I couldn't ask for anything better. So
now that sounds good.
But I do have to say that next week I'll give you guys an update. But the Construct High School regional team heads down to Franksville, Wisconsin for our first tournament, the Lax Wisconsin tournament. Sure. And not only excited about watching some lacrosse, I'm also excited about hitting this Franksville Beer Garden.
Yeah,
so I will bring some updates back. Yeah, I'll bring some updates back on that as well. So that's my weekend.
Yeah, you'll have a fun one, Tosh. You and I were talking before about that. That is a cool spot. It's a beer garden, man. At the wood, the dark wood, just room for a band, good beer. It's and then there's lacrosse. Yep. It's a great lacrosse weekend. You'll have a lot of fun. I remember reffing that event quite a few times, and it's a cool environment for sure. Hopefully,
the boys can come together, and Coach Zendraga has them dialed in to compete and have some fun. Yeah. So we'll let everybody know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Tosh, that's awesome. I know you and I yapped here for quite a while, but good open, good to catch up, and good to get the Newsa-Cast back on track for everybody. So we're ready and raring to go, and onward we go, Tosh. Onward we go. It's that time again, once again, for an old look at new, brought to you by Raleigh Winter and Associates, celebrating 55 years. Did you know that in 1962, an Appleton junior high school teacher with a strong work ethic started a residential realty company? His name, Raleigh Winter. 3 generations later, the Winters still hold true to a strong work ethic and an excellent reputation in the community. Today, Raleigh Winter and Associates remain actively involved in providing retail, office, and industrial users an affordable, well-designed working environment through the creation and/or acquisition of quality real estate in the Fox cities and even beyond new. So what do you say? Let's take an old look at new.
Hey, Newsa-Cast listeners, it is time for the old look at new. That chance that we take a little bit of a look at Wisconsin history, United States history, whatever we kind of wrap our head around. So, Joe, what do you got for an old look at new this week?
Well, Tosh, I'm wrapping my fluffy head around not necessarily, well, I guess it's history, Tosh. It's local history, Appleton history. But as many of you come to know, I'm a biker. And with it, I've learned that you need to do maintenance on your bike. And sometimes that's a challenge. I am fortunate that I have a neighbor across the street that does it. But I've also discovered a really cool little bike shop called Chain Reaction Cyclery on North Superior. And I was in there the other day and I just felt like having a conversation. So Nikki, and I've talked to her before. She is one of the coolest ladies I have ever met. And she told me that they are celebrating, Tosh, get this, their 17th anniversary in that spot is Chain Reaction Cyclery. So for one, congrats. 2, Tosh, I think, we've come to have hidden gems. Poplar Hall, I think, being our first. Yep. I got to say Chain Reaction is definitely a hidden gem. So they have been there for 17 years, but as Nikki and I talked, I said, Nikki, and thinking about this segment, I said, we have an old look at new segment. Can you tell me the history of your building? And she knew it. She showed me pictures. So Tash, it started in 1914. It started as a grocery, and the owner lived next door. And if you look at the front of this building, you can see the old house next door. And it stayed that way until, I don't know, sometime late 50s, early 60s. After that, it became many things. It was a motor shop at one time. It was a stencil shop for a couple of years. That's kind of cool. You don't see many of those. Yeah. It was an ethnic grocer and a couple of other things. But it was a small town corner business that just kept on. And then obviously Nikki and her husband then bought it. And it's a super, super cool bike shop, but it's a really cool corner neighborhood business, family business, and well-deserved of an old look at new. And I absolutely love them. And thank you to Nikki, and check out our social. I think we're going to link up and get some pictures flowing. So it's a really cool story. And if you are a biker and you need anything, check them out. They're cool folks indeed, Tosh. So
that's awesome. Well, congratulations on 17 years. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
And it's always nice to have those local spots as well.
Right.
It just makes you feel good going there and getting stuff taken care of. Fantastic.
I even found out, Tosh, that we're kind of neighbors. She lives a few blocks to the south of me. So yeah,
awesome.
My dollars, kind of stayed in the neighborhood, and I can keep pedaling away. Darn staple that was in my back tire. Tosh, 3 tubes it took me. I took 3 tubes. This was the 3rd tube going in that back tire, and it was one stupid little staple that we finally found. So thank you, Nikki, for that. But
support local.
Yeah, support local indeed. Absolutely. Hashtag support local. Well, Tosh, that's my old look at new. What are you taking a look at?
Well, I'm going to go back to the date of June 17th, and we're going to go all the way back to, not all the way back, but back to 1965. And in West Dallas in 1965, a gentleman was born, and his name is Dan Jansen.
Yeah.
And if you know Dan Jansen, he won his first Olympic medal in the 1,000 meter in world record time. And you remember back to Dan Jansen, he was like the hype. He was all ready, and he fell twice.
Yeah.
And I think this was his last chance to win a medal.
And his sister, what was it with his sister? Like Win It for Jane, was it, or something?
Yeah, something like that. I know he's gone on to, he has a foundation which contributes to youth sports, which is obviously near and dear to our heart.
Yeah, every kid plays.
Donated to, every kid plays. He's donated education and research of leukemia. So he was a great individual, a great, person representing Wisconsin, and did a fantastic job in those Olympics and won that 1,000 meter in world record time. So June 17th, 1965.
That's great, Tosh. It's don't you love the Olympics, right? Some of our greatest sports memories, the Miracle on Ice, but Dan Jansen is definitely one of them. I mean, that was right in our Olympic, watching years. His thighs were incredibly huge. He was racing for something that we can't remember, but we knew it was important. And he, just winning a gold, the agony of defeat, all of that was so good. And right. West Allis, that complex being built, I think after that or during that it was
Pettit
cool
Ice Center.
Yeah, yep. Pettit Ice Center. Sure. No, it's a great one, Tosh. Well, I would say we nailed that old look at new. I love both of those.
Hey, Newsa-Cast listeners, we have an interview with Mike Draheim from XLR8 Sports. Mike has been involved with the training of youth for a long time, and Joe had an opportunity to go to his new facility in Menasha and check out XLR8 Sports. You're going to love this interview, just talking about training youth athletes in the Fox Valley. So sit back and enjoy the interview.
We're sitting in XLR8. So we had you on in April, had a great conversation. We talked about athletes. In the meantime, we discovered Lily Fouts, kind of nerded out on what you do here from Foot Strike. And I'm sitting in XLR8. You gave me the tour one. It's an absolutely fantastic facility. I really understand now kind of visually what you were doing, what you were talking about. It's a really cool place.
Thanks.
We're sitting in some batting cages. It didn't even register with me that. I mean, these are pretty sweet. We basically designed them ourselves for the facility, and we can pull them all the way back for our open field stuff. But then having our athletes be able to do pitching, hitting lessons. Right. So we do a lot of baseball stuff, especially with the staff that we have and the coaches that we have available. You're opening my eyes to discover like what we have in the Valley, what's available for athletes to train. We're going to get into all of the athletes that you have from D1 to D3. I mean, there's so many, but I first wanted to start off with Bill Walton. I know he passed a couple of weeks ago, and you and I have kind of a special connection, at least a 24-hour connection with him. That the night of Red Smith, our last banquet, he sat at your table. You told the story in April of how he memorized everybody at your table, but I don't know. I was actually kind of sad that the day he died. He was one of those guys you don't meet often, that you just had a really special connection with somebody. Yeah, and he was so personal with everybody, and even when the news came, I had people like sending me messages, "Hey, sorry to hear that," because I only knew him for that one night, but we had such a good connection. He kind of basically made him part of our his team. Yeah, what he kind of mentioned, but even like the people that were with us that night on the Accelerate table were like, "Hey, that was a great night, great memories." It was just. They even had a connection with him. Right. When he passed, obviously there's a million different things wherever you look on his life, different stories. And he truly was one of those guys. It was pretty amazing because if you just implemented just a little bit of his outlook and I just really look and zest of life, it does good things. That guy was pretty incredible. Yeah, and after that, they actually had a thing on ESPN. I think it was 30 for 30 or something like that. Kind of got into like his time in Portland and all this stuff, and with Wooden, and just so it's kind of cool just to kind of watch a little more in depth, knowing the person personally. Yes, kind of cool. Being a Grateful Dead fan that I am, there was one where I saw he told the story of the first time that he brought Larry Bird and that Celtic team to the Dead were playing at the Garden that night, and it was just eye-opening for those guys, and the story was told in only the way that Bill Walton can tell it, but it was epic indeed. Yes. Well, Mike, we're I'm glad I'm in your facility to understand. But the big story, I really the thing I want to talk to you most about are the athletes that you train in this facility from and in all different sports. I mean, we had Lily on, and I mean, let's start with her. I mean, she had incredible success. I mean, her whole career, she's going now to Nashville to pursue, both running at a Division I level and music. But you have, I mean, at one time, I think you sent me a text that you had 46 athletes competing that day. Yeah. So I don't even know where to begin. But I mean, Lily for one is great, and then Josh as well. I know that story is pretty amazing, has been covered, and I know I asked you what his last name was, and I don't even know if I can say it again. Onwanelli, I don't know, something like that. But I guess those two in particular we'll start with, and then there's a bunch more after that.
Yeah. So Lily, I've known since all through high school, and it's kind of cool how you can see an athlete through athletics wise, and knew she did the music stuff, and then when you mentioned one time that you were saw Lily Collins downtown, I'm thinking I think I know her, and just kind of seeing what she's doing now for school and stuff, and then just for kind of, it's not just the athletics part of it, it's the personal side or the outside of athletics that kind of shows like what kids can do and what anybody can do. But yeah, and then she goes to state, 12-second PR. She was 7/10 from the state record. But that's what happens when you have some great times, great competition. Then in the 4x8, she came back and she ran a PR in that by 3 seconds. And she mentioned to it in her interview, because I went up right before the race and it was raining out, and I said, "What track's the fast track?" And she remembered that during her race. So just some of the mental stuff. And then she had a 6-second PR in the 2 miles. So she had a first, second, and third at state her last weekend. And then you mentioned Josh. If you don't know the story, he was he was from Campbellsport, moved to Africa with his parents. He moved back to live with his aunt and uncle. His mom and dad didn't come back, but because they didn't fully move back to the area, it wasn't a full transfer back. So since January, it was kind of like throwing some ideas out to his coaches and saying, "This is what about this? What about this?" They'd send it for appeals process, and they finally had his mom came back. Then some congressmen got involved, state level and the national level, about getting some of the documentation so that that showing that his dad couldn't come back, and so that solidified their ruling and allowed him to run. He ended up running the 100 and 200 meter state championships. Actually, this weekend he was just at the national championships for New Balance out in Pennsylvania, and had the 7th fastest time, but because of how the automatic qualifiers for finals, he was the 9th guy. It'd been nice to see, but he ran a 10.42 and had a really good showing with that. So hopefully he gets some college stuff, even though he's a senior. Hopefully he gets a little bit more. And those are kind of some of the cool things, with watching these kids grow, and also you see their personal, like some of the struggles that a lot of people don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Sure.
That we kind of know just because we deal with them on such a daily basis for their preseason up to their season.
Do you find it brings up an interesting question? So, I mean, you're right. You never know what's going on in somebody's personal life. I mean, this is probably an escape for a lot of these kids, right? I mean, this is just something that they're good at. It's a whole different world for them. They can step into this world and for an hour and a half, whatever it is, and then take that and compete, and everything that goes into that too is a different world and a rush.
Yeah, a lot of times it's the competition or the sports is a social thing to them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's their best part of their day, is getting out and competing and doing what they're good at, or hey, they just want to work hard. They do things. Everyone's at a different level of what they do, but sometimes with knowing some kids' backgrounds, this is their escape. That this is their highlight, or what they do well at, and then this is the way that, hey, I can help with getting noticed for school. Even if it doesn't pay for the school, it gets them into a team where that's another social aspect of getting on a team, and versus just going to school on your own and not knowing anybody. Well, first day of practice when I was in college, I had 40 teammates,
right?
And I got to know them within the first week. We had to know all their names. So that was one of those things that it's a social aspect of it, even not just the high school level, but moving on to like a college level.
Right. So how many would you say athletes now have competed this spring at state in all the different sports that you've worked with?
That's what I was trying to always figure out. We had 48 for track, so that's kind of, I was gone that weekend, even though my son had a baseball tournament. I said I'm gone.
Yeah.
Because we had 48 kids competing in, I think it was 86 events. 24 of them came home with medals. In 36 medals total. So it was a pretty good, basically, half the kids came home with medals, and some had some repeats.
Yeah.
But then like with like lacrosse, soccer, baseball, you get a couple kids from each one. We have kids that come from Sheboygan, Plymouth, down in Madison area, Wisconsin Rapids.
And you were saying that you really, I mean, your footprint is a large. I mean, people are driving 2-3 hours to come here to train, to just better themselves.
Yeah, I have like 5 or 6 kids in the last year that came from the Upper Michigan, Northern Michigan area, and then for, I think it was for Wisconsin Rapids, they're coming twice a week.
Yeah.
That girl, she was a 2-time champ, so 100 and 200 meter in state championships this year. So I think last year she was a state champ in the 100. She improved it in the 200, and then but kids from Madison, Milwaukee area, just people will say like, well, don't they have what's up here? I'm like, well, there's other training programs, but they're coming here for specific things.
Like a 1992 treadmill, right?
Yes. It's over 30 years old. Actually, I've close to about 70 athletes now that I train their parents or both parents.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the same treadmill that your parents ran on.
That thing is badass. You were showing it to me earlier. I mean, the incline that can go on, the speed, the different drills you were showing me, that upright drill that they were doing where they're running. How fast were they running?
The treadmills can go up to 30, but we've had some kids go 27 miles an hour, but then they go up to 40% grade. So we're working on posture, foot strike, their length of push through their stride.
And they're not using hands. I mean, my face would be road rash.
Yeah, they're not holding on, but they're using their arms, pumping fast when they're doing that sprint technique.
No, it's incredible. I mean, that's the kind of specialized training. I'm really glad I got to see that visually, because that was. Yeah, that is pretty badass, no doubt about that. How many sports do you think, different sports do you have come through this building? I mean, you talked about lacrosse and track and field and all that.
So you have the typical high school sports. We've worked with kids from every sport. We have some swimmers. I've had some divers, basically because we're working on different things.
Mm-hmm.
They're not working on sprint technique and things, but they're working on conditioning. You saw one of the girls doing back pedal. Our swimmers do a lot of back pedals for their leg strength because of their kick, and then it's good conditioning. It's more of a leg workout. But people think about just their high school sports, football, basketball, but then you get lacrosse, you get your rugbies,
right?
The ones that are kind of getting a little more of the club and coming, like lacrosse just changed into a WIA sport this year. But then you're back with wrestling. Garrett Lowney was an Olympian in 2004.
Right.
Worked with him, but then also I've had 2 brothers that moved to the area. Now they live in North Carolina. They were table tennis.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So working on quickness, agility, change of direction. And when I first started, I worked with a lady. She was a mom that wanted to work on getting her black belt, and then worked on her kicking velocity.
Yeah.
And so we had certain things that we can work on their kicking. And she basically, after a couple weeks, she goes, "Yeah, my sparring partner knows it's working." I'm like, "How?" She's like, "Because she knows I'm kicking harder."
Yeah.
So that was just for her black belt, just to kind of work on that. So there's training for that, but then we've had some golfers do some different things. The non-traditional high school sports or the lifelong sports that you think of.
Right.
But even like, running marathon stuff. We don't do a lot of marathon training, like here's your program, but working on running efficiency, helping them, run faster. Lady that we took off, she always tells me whenever that we took off a minute of her time per mile, which is 26 minutes on a marathon.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's nuts. So old guys like me can benefit too.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
You call me old?
Oh, you said it first.
Yeah, I did. That is interesting. At the end, we're all these sports are kind of using the same muscles, right? The core, the foot placement, things like that. I mean, it's really where it's at, I think, right?
Yeah, the core of it, and then when we transfer into the sports and even the positions. As a running back versus the defensive back, or a center versus a point guard. yes, you have to get up and down the court. You got to do some fundamentally sound things, being able to look up and down. But then, some of the post work, for a basketball player, there's, granted they all have to do it, but, there's more emphasis. And, if you can't always require the big guys to get up and down in the same time frame,
right,
or have the same speed. But they like to compare themselves a little bit, even like the football guys, like your running backs versus your linemen. But the nice thing is when we can have a team in here or a group of guys from the same team, and I can easily adjust the speeds on the treadmills to do the same kind of work, but at just different intensities for what they need. So, one guy might be able to go, at 25 elevation at 12 miles an hour, and another guy can go at 9. I can easily quick make it, but they're still able to work out together.
Right.
So that's what kind of makes our training a little bit more unique.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. How long would you say athletes with you? I mean, are they here usually through their high school years? I'm sure everybody's different.
Yeah, it just depends on when they get started. I just had a girl starting today. I trained her brother, and now she's just graduated, going into college and getting ready for her college career. But then I've had one kid that is a baseball player from Menasha. He started when he was 8 years old. He just graduated. He's already getting ready for his college career. So hopefully he's got a couple more years and then a couple more years after that. But there's some kids that have trained for 10, 12 years throughout. Just depends when they get started.
Sure.
But then the cool thing is whatever they get started is that we can take them through their college career.
Yeah.
And then, and if things adjust, there's one kid I started when the week before his 7th birthday, trained him all through his college career. And then he started working for me a couple years ago until he moved away. But he was a wrestler. And then he was getting ready for baseball. Then he got a little bit older. Then he was football. And then it kind of went all the way through, and he ended up going to college for baseball.
Sure.
So basically, throughout his career, we kind of changed what sports we were training for, what the emphasis was, and took him all the way through his college career. So he was 8 to 18, so that was 10 plus another 4-year career.
Right.
So 14 years of training.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And I guess vice versa, you've had people, you were telling me a story today about how a kid's just in the area for a few weeks and comes in for some training. Yeah.
If they originally lived in the area and they came back, and one I trained his older brother, and they were living in Florida and came back for a wedding, and on the way they stopped at grandparents' house, trained for a week, went to the wedding. Instead of him going back to Florida, he stayed for another 3 weeks and flew back on his own, and he's still playing high school baseball down in Florida. So I kind of follow his career and stuff, and then another kid we were actually at lunch. They were here this summer and they're back for the summer.
Yeah,
and wanted to get in.
Yeah, speaking of lunch too, we were talking about it. It didn't seem like too long ago that you never heard of a D1 athlete. Maybe one, a basketball player or something. But now that's not at all the case. I mean, there's a lot of D1 athletes. There's a lot of just college athletes that come through your program, and all the high schools around here seem to be producing those kind of athletes.
Yeah, and actually I think helps with the social media stuff and how athletes are being able to track, because on the East Coast there's a lot of small schools that are smaller than UW Oshkosh, and they're Division I. And so you get those schools now recruiting here,
sure,
or following their progress and able to reach out to them easier versus just sending out a letter. Back in the day, send a letter questionnaire like, "Are you interested?"
Right.
And I think that's helping them get noticed, or the athletes to find those schools a little easier. But then, you do have a lot more. You're hearing a lot more. I think we have over 160 Division I or pro athletes we've worked with over the years, and it's just more of becoming more of a natural, not as expectant.
Right.
For that. Oh, how'd you hear about them? Like, it's that they're being able to get found, and the recruiting process. You watch people's Twitters and their pages and stuff is more of they're posting all their videos, and all these coaches are getting they're seeing them in action a lot more,
right,
faster.
You bring up an interesting point, I think, and I never thought about this, but this probably is what makes a big difference is the social media. I mean, you and I were talking, we had a great lunch, a good conversation, and a lot of it was, we were talking about social media, and maybe we can touch on what we were thinking for the Newsa-Cast, but the kids, I mean, they use that now as a tool. Friday night football or whatever. All of these kids are posting their 80-yard touchdown run or whatever. It's a different world. It's a world I'm trying to learn. I think you're trying to learn, but it's definitely a different world the way these kids now use it and engage and communicate.
Yeah, especially with the network. Once they follow a team and the coaches follow them back, when they post it, their coach sees it immediately, or the coach recruiting. Like I showed you the one video where the kid posted it within a couple hours. There was
12,000 views.
Yeah. And the first hour or two is 1,500 views, and by the time the baseball game was over, it was 8,000 views. Oh. And I think it was at 12,500 views just from him running on the treadmill. And all the coaches that are recruiting him, because they follow him, see it right away.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Newsa-Cast listeners, you can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Please help us grow by subscribing or sharing the Newsa-Cast with friends, or follow us on Facebook, X, TikTok, or Instagram. A huge thank you to Diggstown for all the music in today's episode. Catch a gig or find them on Spotify. Head over to our YouTube channel to get exclusive content like the full interviews and speeches from past Red Smith Banquets. Northeastern Wisconsin Sports Advancement is a 501c3 organization. Our mission is to raise money, provide support, and bring greater awareness for youth sports organizations in Northeast Wisconsin. So it's such a different world too. I mean, we touched a little bit too on the portal. So the kids are using social media to get in, but then they get to school and all of a sudden they're using the portal. And I mean that too is an entirely, I guess, defining world. It feels like it tipped way too much to one side, but boy, it not only do you have D1 athletes, but now every kid that's in college seems to be in the portal.
Yeah, and that's the thing is where you got to be careful. Like, am I going to find another place?
Right.
Where a couple years ago, I think the kids that entered the softball portal, 40% of them or something like that didn't find a new home.
Right.
So if you're going into the portal, if you're not starting, you got to be ready to go for and then how do you market yourself? Or is it because you know someone that's in that system that you're going to, that they publicize you a little bit? That's always one where at least you're not stuck someplace. If it like a coaching change or things like that, you're not stuck there. They never made you do that. You could get out, but now it's like, okay, if I didn't like it, I'm not stuck there. I have to sit for a year. But there's ways that it needs to be adjusted yet, because right now it's just a free for range. I think that's if it's something like, hey, you get one chance where you don't have to sit for a year,
right?
But then you have to sit if you bounce again, because there's some kids that are committing and a week later they're getting some different NIL money and they're committing someplace else.
Boy, college sports, I can't keep up with it with the their licensing money now that they can get, and I don't know how true any of these stories are, but boy, it seems like there's a lot of money now in college sports for these athletes.
Yeah, and sometimes it feels like some people commit someplace just to see if they can use it as a leveraging thing,
right?
For another team, we'll give you this much if you come here,
right?
So they're leveraging it. It's allowed.
You can't blame them.
Yeah, exactly. If it's allowed, why wouldn't you do it? But there's so much changing over with some of these rosters. It's almost become like a professional sport where the coaches also have to manage his roster.
Yeah. Like
a free agency is leaving.
It really
and all that
has,
stuff.
yeah.
It makes it tough.
I mean, you had mentioned it. It's the same thing that they do in football, right? They have a capologist. That's pretty much his only job, is to manage the cap. Now they have somebody just to manage the portal.
Yeah. Yeah, who's leaving, who's coming, who's out there?
Right.
Who can we try and convince? And
right.
Then it's added another avenue of that coaches have to be aware of.
Right. Different world indeed. So in the calendar, we're in this. This is middle of June. Where are you in the calendar? How often are kids are training year round for their sports? Is there an off season, so to speak, or is there never an off season?
Yeah, our off season for the athletes is during their season.
Okay.
Because we're training them to get ready for their season, and then when they get there, now we gave the coach a better athlete to work with. But we'll still have some kids that come in like maintenance things every other week or on a Saturday, depending what their teams do on the weekends, because that's usually their one day that they can probably do some stuff.
Right.
But then once they get going into their season, let's say you have a football player but also a basketball player, hey, towards the end of the season, they call us up and like, hey, I want to work on my vertical, my lateral quickness, because we're not doing that in football. Then, hey, we get them ready. We do a little more conditioning stuff because they're not doing as much. Where, if they're going from basketball to track, well, now we got to work on some different things. What events you're running? What
right.
are you, so because basketball season is pretty long, and once they get close to the end of the season, okay, I'm not playing as much, or there's not as much games as much as like early in the season where you got 2-3 games a week. Now we got one game. Hey, I can sneak a workout in.
Sure.
Get ready for my next season. That's usually where we get like the maintenance stuff. But typically when they're out of season, 1 to 3 times a week. It all depends on the athlete's schedule, like how often they're doing stuff at their school.
Right.
We don't want to take kids out of the weight room. We want them in the weight room with their teammates, their coaches. But how can we complement? How can we do some individualized stuff with them so that they can be at their highest level? Because sometimes it's like, hey, I got an injury. That's where a lot of times I get some trainers that refer me because they're like, hey, you've been getting shin splints and things like that. Every time you go in for your season, all right, there's got to be something going on. Let's go by Mike, have the guys accelerate, look at your running mechanics. Let's
right.
work on some things. And then that way they're healthier for their season. And I have some coaches that refer also because they hey, this kid needs to work on this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you're doing a team thing, those individuals sometimes can't get caught up or surpass where they're at because they're doing the same thing that everyone else is doing.
Sure.
So everybody improves a little bit. So looking at for that edge, hey, how do I get better than everybody else if I'm doing the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to gradually get better as a team, but
right.
how do I individually get more playing time or do or specific things they got to work on.
Speaking of schedule, so we were talking about a guy like Brock Arndt who just graduated from Appleton North, going to where for football? Ohio for football. So their schedule is pretty interesting. I mean, you graduate June 1st, whatever graduation was, and then he's almost immediately off to school or pretty quickly after.
And that usually happens with most Division I programs where you go to you're getting your summer program. You're not showing up like the week before, like football,
right.
like high school football. Yeah, granted, we're doing our training right now for our team, and everybody else is, and then you can actually have your official practices. They're doing their whole strength conditioning program just like all the high schools are, but the problem is all the kids aren't local.
Right.
And some kids actually graduate early and then go down for the spring semester. So they have spring ball and then they go. So I've had a couple athletes over the years that graduate early and they miss their spring sports that they do.
So a senior would graduate in December and then go to whatever college to play spring ball as what would be his senior spring season. Oh, wow.
Yep. Yeah. So I had a girl a couple years ago before COVID sessions. I think it was that the 19 or 20 year. It was 18 and 19 was her last year. She was only a junior. She's like, yeah, it was my last year of track. And someone goes, no, you're only a junior. Like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I'll be at Madison next year. And she played soccer down there, but she went down for the fall or for spring because their season's in the fall. Right. So she got through their spring season and then their summer program and then got right into it.
Are they pretty good students, those kids that can pull that off?
Yes. Yeah. You have to get all your stuff done ahead of time and all you can be dragging out your credits, your last semester.
Sure.
So they have to get all their stuff done ahead of time.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. Who else, I guess, locally now? Who's going to be playing football? Who's away right now? Getting ready for the fall season, these upcoming college sports, a first year freshman.
I'm just trying to think. There's a kid from Menasha. He was graduated last year. Evan. He's at Madison, linebacker, defense end. I think he's gotten some pretty big size.
Yeah.
But then like Brock left and Jake Stoffel from Appleton North.
He's going to wrestle.
I think he already left for Missouri.
Okay.
His sister actually played at GB and she left for Duke about the same week. She's going to play down there. So there's some of the athletes that follow, but there's a lot of like the winter, the basketball and the track kids that they'll go down and they'll start their stuff right away in the fall. Everyone thinks track, it's a spring sport. Then you get down there, you have fall track. So you get down there, you start doing some basketball kids. They start with a week or two. It's not your season. So I'm just trying to think top of my head, just all the other athletes, but there's quite a few going.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, it's been eye-opening, like I said early, that doing this podcast, kind of discovering that that's not the truth anymore. There's so many great athletes that are coming through here, and the help with XLR8 for real. I mean, that's can't help but help, right? I mean, just train the body to do what it needs to do.
Yeah, and it's always great for us that you can be part of the process. There's a lot of stuff that goes into the athletes with, their home life, their social life, their coaches, the stuff at school, their teachers and stuff. Everyone's like, oh, thanks for all the help. I'm like, well, we're just part of the process. They have to come in with a great work ethic. They have to, be, open to learning different things and also some criticisms. And it's like we're not going to sugarcoat stuff. When hey, this is what we think you need to work on, and you've probably heard it before. A lot of times, mom and dad look at each other or look at the kid and like, yeah, you have. Yeah. But we're just kind of a different voice that kind of helps steer them in the right. And we're always here for athletes, especially like this winter. Josh was trying to throw in ideas like how can we make sure that you're eligible and things like that. But we have a lot of athletes that leave for school and come back and just talk about school or even that. Dealing with coaches or athletes on their team, it's not they're close knit when they're in school, like even like junior high to high school, right? And then high school to college, there's different social aspects that take effect. Sure. And sometimes we have to have athletes that just come back and just hang out for a little bit and after their sessions and just talk and stuff. So that's kind of a cool thing of just being involved in some of these athletes' lives, especially the longer we train them, the better we know them. Sure. Yeah, they feel safe. It's home for them. Yeah, that's got to feel really good. It's just building this place. That's got to be the best part of it, almost. Yeah, it's just and people say the atmosphere that when the kids come in and you see, some of the high school kids, they hang out and they talk with the 8, 9, 10-year-olds that they see, and if they're from their program or not in the same community, and they understand that they were once those kids looking up to the high school, college kids, and they usually kind of joke around with them or have fun with them and or kind of help them even out if they're doing something. And the kid has questions. I'm like, hey, can you just help him with this? Because then it kind of gives it a little versus us helping them. Right. They'll help them with the technique, and they're like, oh man, I can't believe he helped me with this today. Yeah. Oh, that's huge. That's one of the successes that Kimberly had. I think they were one of the first schools that really did that, where their Bulldog program, or their high school program would go down to the Bulldogs. Mm-hmm. And you're right. I mean, we all look up to these athletes as a kid. I mean, the high school athletes, he's the Michael Jordan of the world at that time. Yeah. Yeah, because that's who they see when they go to the high school games. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what sport. They see them performing, and then they go home and they're like, oh, so and so was there today, right? And the parents like, who? But the kids are like all ecstatic that they worked out with one of the high school kids that granted they're not doing the same stuff, but they're here at the same time, right, and watching what they're doing, and then they see the work ethic that those guys do and gals do on that level, and that kind of helps them like, well, geez. That just like it's an expectation of this is what I need to do. Right. One of the cool things that kind of speaks to what you're saying when you look at the walls here. I mean, your walls are filled with T-shirts, jerseys. You were telling me 1980, North won the state title. That shirt all the way to Matt Erickson's jersey to some hockey jerseys. I mean, it's a cool touch. I love it. It's a great feel. Yeah, I started training the April of 2000, so this is my 25th summer, and shirts span from all the way back to there. Yeah. And like the jersey and stuff. And actually, I've had people like ask me if they could buy a certain jersey. I'm like, no, believe it. Those are from our athletes. Yeah. Like I have a Oregon State College World Series jersey on the wall from one of the athletes. They made it to the World Series. I sent him a message, hey, congrats, but now the shirt you're bringing better have some College World Series on it. Sure. He ended up getting drafted. It was Cole Brocker from Kimberly. I think he was on our 2008 on our state championship team. They qualified for the World Series, and after he got drafted by the Braves, he came home that summer and said, hey, here's something better than a T-shirt, and he gave me his jersey. That's awesome. Yeah. I love that's a great touch. You're right. That's a story. I mean, the athlete had to be comfortable to come back here and give you that's got to be really rewarding. Yeah, and even when like for his pro career, when he lived in town here, he's home with visiting his parents and stuff. Those guys all come back and work out and stuff. So then some of the younger athletes see that, the pro guys that have worked out here over the years.
Any good Basio stories?
There's quite a few.
Yeah, just can't tell him it's a kid show.
Well, no, he actually comes back and works with my son's 11U and then a 12U program for Menasha.
Nice.
And then when we went out to Grand Canyon, we stopped on the way back through Denver area and took us to a cage and a big facility we had all by ourselves.
Yeah.
And hitting lesson, pitching lesson with him and over the years and Matt Erickson over the years, I trained him through his pro career, but now he still does lessons in the winter.
Sure.
Now he's down with the Brewers down the season, and like Dave Gassner was another pro pitcher.
Yeah.
And so he still does some stuff here during the off
So
season
those guys will come use these tunnels or whatever, and yeah, that's awesome. It's like we're in the batting, right outside the batting tunnels. It's huge. These are beautiful batting tunnels. If you get into that, it's they're awesome.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of during our winter. I don't get to use this area. All the baseball is going nonstop from about 3 o'clock to about 9:30 every night.
Sure.
Just doing individual lessons with the guys. So had some good luck with some good instructors over the years, and then with Matt, Dave, and Chris coming back. When he's in town visiting his son, he just throws it out there, and I fill his schedule.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
Well, I love it. Well, Mike, I know this was kind of quick and sweet. It's been a fantastic day. Like I said, I'm glad I got to come here and see. I mean, you've got a 60-yard. You can, like you said, you can do the 40-yard dash in here. I mean, this place is legit. I can see why the athletes are who they are, and like I said, we had a fantastic lunch. So I've had a great afternoon.
It's a good day.
It really was, and well, you and I too, and in our brainstorming, we were talking creating content, and. Yeah, I don't know. I think we came up with something maybe that might drop on some Friday nights.
All right. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll see it. We'll look for that at the XLR8. I don't know. We haven't come up with a name exactly yet, but there's going to be something there for you guys. But, Mike, this was great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, Tosh, it is time for a Red Smith Banquet throwback. We go to 2021, crazy year, COVID, and we had to go to a virtual show. But somehow, Tosh, that led us to our today's throwback, which is Joe Torre.
Yeah, Joe Torre. I mean, when you talk about a baseball guy, it's Joe Torre.
Yeah.
All right. Just incredible manager, player, assistant, to the commissioner. I mean, he's pretty much done everything you can imagine as far as baseball is concerned.
Yeah,
right?
he definitely has. He was also a radio announcer, a TV, color analyst. Yeah. So I can remember he has a fantastic voice. So I can remember him. You can remember Joe Torre through a lot of years. Bob Euchre is tight with him and his brother. So you've always heard Joe Torre stories. So you might ask, well, how the heck do you get Joe Torre in a COVID year? Jeremy Davis, who does the interview, does a fantastic job. His dad, Jerry Davis, was a big league umpire for a lot of years, and Joe Torre was a director of umpires for a while, so they developed a relationship, and we were able to pull it off online and got Joe Torre set up. His lamp was good. The lighting was good. We were set, and you're going to see it. So him and Jeremy have a really cool dynamic. So it's a cool throwback, and you obviously should know this. You're finding us, but please hit like and subscribe. It's huge for us. Do it on whether you're on the podcast form or whether you're on YouTube. Please hit that, and then check out our catalog because, Tosh, what do we have? 40 some of these on there, and there's been some incredible people that are on there. So just check them out. There's really, really cool stories. I literally, I've been at every one of these banquets, but every time I hear the throwback, it's been so many years since I've heard them, I'm blown away, and sometimes I just laugh out loud, and I'm a letter carrier, so sometimes that gets a little embarrassing. So check that stuff out. Hit like and subscribe, and enjoy Joe Torre.
Red Smith Sports Awards Banquet Throwback.
The Red Smith Award, of course, goes to someone who has made some unique contributions to sport in Wisconsin and also epitomizes the great values that Red Smith exhibited.
Let's give a Red Smith welcome.
He was the 1971 National League Most Valuable Player. As a manager, he's 5th all-time on the career wins list and won 4 World Series with the New York Yankees. In 2014, he was enshrined in the National Baseball Hall of Fame and currently serves as special assistant to the Commissioner of Major League Baseball. He is the legendary Joe Torre. Joe, thanks for joining us for the 56th Annual Red Smith Sports Awards.
Well, Jeremy, it's nice being with you. You know, anytime you can, start talking about baseball, you know that the warm weather is not too far away.
Absolutely. Well, in Wisconsin, it's a little bit further than everybody else, but we'll get there eventually. Well, outside of the cold, what's one thing that you really remember from your time in Wisconsin?
Well, Wisconsin was great. I know, I always look for great places to eat. In Milwaukee, they weren't shy about having, a variety for you. But the thing that made it so special for me, Jeremy, is the fact that my brother Frank played in Milwaukee when, the Braves were in 2 World Series in 57, 58, and they were able to beat the Yankees in 57 and fell short in 58. But it always felt like someplace familiar because of just the warmness of the fans, and it was a cool place to play. And of course, unfortunately, during that time when I was playing for the Braves there, we did move on, picked up our stuff and moved to Atlanta. But the Milwaukee franchise was always pretty special to me.
I mentioned a few roles that you've had in Major League Baseball. Obviously, you've played a number of them between player, manager, now a front office job. Which role do you think that you've played the best? Which one did you excel at the most?
Well, I guess I had the most success overall as a player. I was pretty consistent throughout my 16, 17 years as a player. With a batting average lifetime batting average close to 300, and bounced around for a few different teams. I started with the Braves, as you know, and was traded to the Cardinals, and then from the Cardinals went to the Mets, and that was, that was my playing career. Ended my playing career in New York in 77, and started my managing career in 77 in New York with the Mets. But, probably the most satisfying for me was my managing career. As I mentioned, I started with the Mets, moved to the Braves, had some success with Atlanta for 3 years, and then, I was out of uniform and broadcast for the Angels in Southern California for 6 years, close to 6 years, worked for Gene Autry out there. Which, was a nice perspective to see it from up in the booth. And I can guarantee you the game, it looks a whole lot easier from up there than it did down on the field.
Absolutely.
So I went from there to managing the St. Louis Cardinals. So I 3 teams I played for, I managed, and of course, I got fired from all those 3 teams. So going to the Yankees in 1996 was an opportunity for me to, work for George Steinbrenner, who was very tough, and there was no question about it, but you knew he was going to do whatever he can to put players on the field for you. And so I guess I got a long way around to getting to the point where, managing in my earlier years, I was 100 games under 500, and then go to the Yankees and had the success I had was probably the most satisfied I've ever been professionally in the game, because you had players that won and were successful, and they just never stopped. They just never got tired of winning, and it was a special group I had.
The Braves, when you first started playing for them, were obviously led by the late Hank Aaron. Can you talk about what he meant to you as a teammate, as a friend, and then ultimately what he meant to baseball and even really our whole country?
Well, Jeremy, I sort of cheated a little bit. My brother Frank, as I mentioned, was playing for the Braves. I was a teenager, and I flew to Milwaukee. I was my first plane ride back in 1956, and so I got a chance to meet the Braves that I didn't know it at the time that I would wind up being teammates with 4 or 5 years later. And so when I did get to know Hank as a teammate, it was a lot more comfortable for me than it could have been. But he was a solid citizen, and when I say that, he was a superstar, and he didn't act like it, which I always thought was cool. And Eddie Matthews was one of my favorites also, and he was the same type of guy. And both those guys used to jab at each other in that clubhouse, and it never got serious. It was always in a kidding manner. So Hank was a great student of the game. As I mentioned, he was very unselfish, helped anybody who needed it, and was a great team player. I mean, he played every day. Stole bases, but didn't steal them for numbers. He just stole them to try to win a ball game here and there. And he was, he's going to be missed because he was a special friend, and always enjoyed visiting with him at the Hall of Fame. And from time to time he would come to New York, and we'd get together.
What was it like leading the Evil Empire, the team that everybody loved to hate?
I remember my first meeting with all the team, and I had also remembered, in whatever sport it may be, basketball, football, when a team wins a championship, there are a lot of those teams that spend all their time celebrating, and then the next year or the next season for them, they never show up. All of a sudden they're not as good as they were, and they didn't compete. So one of the things I said to our team, I said, guys, I never been to a World Series other than, buying a ticket. And I said, I don't want to win just one World Series. I want to win 3 in a row. And it was just something. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to let them know that, once you do win, if you're lucky enough to win, you've got to validate what you did or who you were. And, I'll be darned if this club, doesn't go out there and, win 4 out of the first 5 years in the World Series. So it was a special group I had. Worked for George Steinbrenner, which wasn't easy. 12 years in New York. It was really special to do something like that with that organization, especially in your hometown.
We've touched a little bit on a number of different roles that you've played, player manager together, now in a front office job as the special assistant to the commissioner. What's your career goal now? What's next for you?
I don't know. That's a good point. I mean, I'm probably, I wanted to phase out a little bit with Major League Baseball because it, you can tell your dad this, the umpires were a full-time job, and I didn't want to be full-time anymore. So, but I don't know. I want to stay connected in some way, Jeremy, because, I'd like to be able to offer my opinion. The game, I'm a little concerned because, the last couple of years you've had, home runs, strikeouts, and walks. And to me, I think we need more entertainment on the field than that. The stolen base, the triple, the first to third on a base hit. But there are too many swings and misses. And that's going to take some changing in philosophy, for different teams to adjust to, or readjust to, I should say. But analytics, and I believe that you use all the information you can get, but sometimes you got to understand and never forget. Actually, you should never forget that you're in the game. You're sitting in that dugout as a manager, and you have instincts that I don't want you to ignore just because the numbers and the numbers that were crunched out tell you something different. I think you've got to still use your gut every once in a while.
Well, I sure hope that Major League Baseball is listening to that opinion, and we certainly share or appreciate you sharing that opinion and so many memories with us as well. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Enjoyed it, Jeremy. Thanks very much.
Tosh, we're getting close to an end of another great Newsa-Cast, but we always like to do a little segment called It's Forgotten and I'm Never Forgetting. So, Tosh, what are you never forgetting?
Well,
All right, I screwed that up, Tosh.
You almost threw me for a loop there,
Yeah,
Joe.
well, you know, we struggled with this early on, folks. I could never say it right. So it's really the opposite, right? It's forgotten and I'm never forgetting. So Tosh, what's forgotten in your life? I'll get it right, folks. A retake, a restart.
Well, I have a beginning driver in my household now, and he has just got his temps. Ethan passed it, and so we've been out driving a little bit, and I will tell you that I want to forget impatient drivers. You know, like I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and they're like right on his tail. And, and we had one lady flip us off because we didn't go fast enough through the roundabout, and I'm like, holy crap. Come on.
Yeah, Tosh.
Take a little time.
You know, we talk. You talk about the roundabout. Remember, I asked you that question about people blowing through when I was on the bike, and they still do that. I mean, come on. What? I just don't get it. You know, we've all tried to learn how to drive. It takes a little bit. You know, 16-year-old kid, that's not the easiest thing to do.
No, absolutely not.
People break, but now Big E will do fine. But
he'll do fine. It's just that, you know, that minute you save by blowing through that intersection or riding that person's tail, just think about, maybe it's a minute that I can just look around you and see things going on
or be listening to the Newsa-Cast, right? They should be just calmly just listening to us complain about you driving through a roundabout too fast.
So yeah, that's it. It's impatient drivers for me, Joe. How about yourself? What do you want to forget?
Well, Tosh, you and I talked about this before we hopped on. It's booking people for this podcast. You know, we obviously we're coming out on maybe not the day that we usually plan to come out, and a lot of it is just booking people for this. You know, you go into with an idea. You and I have done this almost a year, and it starts to get to be a lot of people, and it's not the easiest process. Sometimes, like today, you know, we got somebody booked within a half hour, had an idea pop in one of our heads. We texted it out. They committed. We had a time, and boom, you know, we've got them or going to be interviewing them for a future episode. Other times, you get ghosted. It's just incredible. So I guess it's just, I wish I could forget the process of actually booking. And we fought this with Red Smith as well, trying to get guests. It's really, really hard to find people to interview sometimes. Other times it's like striking gold in your endless harvest. Yeah.
It's definitely, we're running into a little dry stretch here, but it'll pick up and we will have some obviously fantastic interviews in the future as well as we get these people nailed down.
But you know, Tosh, I probably shouldn't have even just admitted that, because somehow, some way, the episodes are turning out to be really, really good. You know, we have to thank Taylor for sure, because he's the one that's pulling the magic, because sometimes we do these interviews on a Wednesday night for a Thursday release. I think we did that last week, actually. You know, they were a little surprised that really it's coming out tomorrow. It's like, but you just do what you have to do, right? To just make this thing tick and go. And it's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Taylor. Our team. I mean, they're doing a great job with social media, getting a great job with getting things out and making us sound halfway decent.
Yeah.
So congratulations to them, because if it wasn't for them, this wouldn't be happening.
Exactly. Or be happening a lot worse if that's possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Tosh, I guess let's get on to the good. Let's get the order right. So, you know, I'm never forgetting, Tosh. What's something you never want to forget?
Well, in the old Look at New, I went back to June 17th, and I found all the stuff happening on June 17th. And it's kind of strange. So it all works kind of in a pattern. So on June 17th, 1994, this is the date we're going back to for never forgetting. The Rangers, 1994, they won the Stanley Cup, and they were having their Stanley Cup parade. Big year for the Rangers winning it. It was a huge, huge deal. Then later that day, Arnold Palmer tees off at what would be his final U.S. Open round on June 17th, 1994. Also, the U.S. was hosting its first World Cup in Chicago on the same date. And later that day, Ken Griffey Jr. tied Babe Ruth with 30 home runs before June 30th.
Wow.
But the biggest thing that people remember from June 17th, 1994 is the O.J. Simpson police chase.
Oh, I remember where I was that day. Totally. Do you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So all these great things are happening, but the one thing that people will remember
right
more than anything is the O.J. Simpson police chase.
1994, June 17th, 1994.
Yeah. All this stuff was going on.
Yeah.
Great sports stuff. And then the police chase.
I was
slow police chase.
I was getting ready to go. I would have been 24 years old. I was getting ready to go out that night. And that was like almost like maybe you had the Gulf War right before there, but CNN was still kind of new. That was like that was the only thing you could do. Then they had ESPN for sport. Well, they both obviously broke to that coverage, and you just got sucked in. I remember I never ended up going out that night. You just literally sat on your couch and you just watched in awe this whole saga unfold. Unbelievable.
Yep.
Reality TV. First reality TV show, Tosh, maybe?
Absolutely. I remember sitting around it. I think really, truly every single station had it on.
Yeah. They really did. They really did. Still
all this
just
cool
nuts.
stuff going on. And that's the one thing that everybody will remember. They'll never forget.
Yeah.
So
I haven't.
Well, that was mine, Joe. How about yourself?
Well, Tosh, I'm never going to forget, and I want to shout out again because I've had several of these now. Man, Poplar Hall just effing rocks, Tosh. This venue is incredible, and who they bring into this venue is even more incredible. So last week, Thursday, I went to see Delvin Lamar Organ Trio. I didn't know who they were, but three-piece band, and they were insanely, like, I don't think I've ever danced that hard in my life. Front row, Delvin was insane. He played an organ, but then his foot pedals were like these huge long pedals, and he played in socks, and the foot pedals were the bass. And you close your eyes, Tosh, there was a bass. It was Phil Lesh was plucking the bass, badass, his thumping bass, but it was all done by his sockless, his sock wearing feet. And it was just the groovy, such good music. And I remember turning around, just looking back at the venue and it with the mezzanine and the windows and the lights. It's really become, I think, my favorite venue in the area. And a lot of it has to do with Dark Star Orchestra played there. Keller Williams, you and I saw there. That was the first show, you and I saw there, and Yonder Mountain String Band. I mean, I can't wait to see who's going to come. I'm assuming in the fall, because I got to meet that guy, Tosh. He's killing it, absolutely killing it. And I always love the people that I go to the shows with. They're always so much fun. And I've learned to accept how the cashless system works, Tosh. And it's you're able to. The nice thing is you're able to step outside either at set break or whenever, because they have a beautiful patio or open space.
Right.
The river's right there. I'm sure it's dynamite for weddings or whatever event you have there. But for me, it's a great music venue, and I'm literally going to go to any show that he books, whoever does the booking, whoever owns that place, whoever you bring in. I just have that much trust in what they're doing that I'm going to go to that show, and I'm going to find people to bring to that show. So
there you go.
Yeah.
If that's not an endorsement, I don't know what is.
Yeah. I felt like I had to do it because they've literally, I've had in 2024, 4 of my best nights have been, or 3 of my, I don't know, whatever it works out to. My best, they're like top 3 best nights so far of the year have all revolved around Poplar Hall and the music and the people I've been with. And it's just, God darn, Tosh, I've had so much fun there. It's such. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, man. I love it. I love it so much.
That's awesome. Fantastic.
Yes. Well, all right.
Good.
Sorry about, I don't know. I went off there, Tosh, but I think it was well deserved. And
Yeah, you're excited. That's okay.
yeah, sometimes that happens. That happens to me, and I've learned in 54 years to accept it, and that's just who I am. So
There you go.
with that, Tosh, we just showed everybody who we were at the Newsa-Cast, and thanks to Mike for it was great to get to his facility and to talk to him and just kind of get an update and just understand how great student athletes are in this area. So, Tosh, always a hoot. We got another one in the books. I think we're right around a year now.
Yeah, right around a year, and we'll keep pumping them out, and
Yeah.
we'll see you next week.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to another great episode of the Newsa-Cast. We'd really appreciate it if you hit up our social pages, subscribe, like, follow, and don't be afraid to engage. Head over to our YouTube channel to get exclusive content like the full interviews and speeches from the past Red Smith banquets.